My wife says I weaponize incompetence. According to her, I pretend to be bad at chores, so she'll just give up and do everything herself. So I decided to test that theory. I stopped doing anything at all. I'm 34M. My wife Hannah is 32F. We live in Portland, Oregon, in this little 3-bedroom Craftsman we bought 3 years ago. On paper, our life looks pretty good. 2 decent incomes, no kids, a dog named Murphy, a backyard with a pergola and string lights that used to make our friends jealous on summer nights. The cracks were inside the house, and most of them were invisible until they were. From the outside, Hannah reads like a high achiever type. She's a marketing director for a tech startup, always put together, color-coded Google Calendar, the kind of person who tracks her water intake in an app. Every drawer in her home office is labeled. Her closet is by color and sleeve length. When we were dating, I thought it was cute. I grew up in a pretty chaotic house outside of Denver. My dad worked oilfield jobs, my mom worked nights as a nurse. The house was, let's call it, lived in. Dishes sometimes stacked up. Laundry got done when someone ran out of socks, and if the bed was made, it usually meant someone was about to take a picture. So when I met Hannah and she had matching hangers and a spice rack alphabetized, it felt like stability, like she was an adult and I was catching up. She liked that I was laid back. I liked that she was on top of things. Somewhere between dating and marriage, those 2 traits stopped being compliments and started being weapons. When we first moved in together, I honestly tried to match her energy. We didn't do a chore chart or anything formal, but I naturally took over certain things: trash, recycling, lawn, most of the cooking, fixing stuff around the house. She did laundry, deep cleaning, organizing projects, and most of the paperwork type things, insurance renewals, dealing with HOA emails, that kind of stuff. The problem started when our definitions of done didn't line up. The first time I noticed it, it was the dishwasher. I had loaded it the way my mom did growing up: plates in the bottom, bowls where they fit, silverware tossed into the basket handle side up. Efficient? Probably not. Functional? Absolutely. Hannah came in, stood there for maybe 3 seconds, and let out this long, theatrical sigh. "You can't put the plates like that, Caleb. The water won't hit them evenly." I stepped aside. "Okay, how do you want it?" She didn't answer. She just started unloading and reloading the entire thing while I stood there watching. Every plate in perfect parallel lines, every bowl at the same angle, all the spoons grouped together, all the forks grouped together. When she was done, she closed it with a little flick and said, "If you're going to do it wrong, it just makes more work for me." I laughed it off at the time. "Guess I need dishwasher 101. She didn't smile back. Same thing with laundry. The first Saturday we did it together, I folded a pile of towels while we watched Netflix. My system: fold in half, then in thirds stack. She waited until I finished the entire stack, picked one towel up, stared at it like it had personally insulted her, and quietly unfolded and refolded it. "Is there a different way you want them?" I asked. "They don't fit in the linen closet if you fold them like this," she said, refolding every single towel I'd just done, faster and sharper than me, stacking them with the tags facing the same direction. "I'll do the folding from now on. It's fine." The message was clear. My help wasn't help, it was an obstacle. That pattern repeated in 100 little ways. I'd wipe down the counters. She'd go behind me with a different spray and redo it. I'd vacuum the living room. She'd plug in the Dyson after and go over the same spots slower. I'd make the bed. She'd come in, rip it all back, smooth the duvet like a hotel maid, fluff the pillows, and say, "You can't just throw the blanket on and call it made." Never thanks, always a correction. At first I thought I was overreacting. I'd grown up with dust bunnies in the corners and mismatched sheets. Maybe I just didn't know what normal clean looked like. So I tried to ask her to teach me. One night I said, "Hey, can we go room by room this weekend and you show me exactly how you like it done? Like, literally step by step. I'll write it down if I have to." She looked at me like I was asking her to perform surgery on me at the dinner table. "I shouldn't have to teach a grown man how to fold a towel, Caleb," she said. "It's basic life skills. Google it if you need to." That stung. Because I'm not a lazy guy. I'm a software engineer. I built half our furniture when we moved in because we couldn't afford West Elm on every paycheck. I fix things that break. I'm not helpless. But in our house, around Hannah, I started to feel like an idiot who couldn't even be trusted with a Swiffer. The second layer of this was social. We'd go out with her friends, mostly other women in their late 20s, early 30s, a lot of them in that girl boss, therapy, TikTok relationship advice world. At least once per hangout, I'd hear my own name come up as some kind of punchline. "If I leave Caleb alone with the laundry, he turns everything into a ball," she'd say, miming a little sphere with her hands. "It's like living with a man-child. I swear he does it on purpose, so I'll just take it over." Her friends would laugh. "You have to watch out for weaponized incompetence," her friend Lauren said once. "It's like they make themselves useless so they never have to do emotional labor." I was 2 feet away, pouring myself a beer in our own kitchen. "I'm right here, you know," I said, trying to keep my voice light. Lauren smirked. "Good, then maybe you'll step up your folding game." They all cracked up again. Hannah didn't defend me. She rolled her eyes and said, "He tries, but honestly, sometimes I feel like I have a teenage son, not a husband." I went to bed that night feeling about 3 inches tall. It wasn't just her friends. She had a group chat with her sister and 2 college friends that sometimes lit up my iPad on the coffee table if she left it unlocked. I wasn't snooping. I'd glance over and see my name, and my eyes would snag on phrases like "Caleb S at it again," or "Why are men like this?" Screenshots of a crookedly made bed, a picture of a shelf where a few books weren't perfectly aligned, a snap of the dishwasher mid-load with the caption, "Exhibit A, male brain." It became a running joke that I was incompetent. The thing is, after a while, you start to internalize that. I'd go to load the dishwasher and my chest would tighten. I'd think, "Don't mess this up. She's going to redo it if you mess this up." I'd stand there, plate in hand, paralyzed between the top and bottom rack. The day everything really started to shift was over something that on paper looked stupidly small, the bookshelf. Hannah had recently gotten a promotion at work and decided she wanted to upgrade her home office. She found this photo on Pinterest of a wall-to-wall built-in bookcase with a little reading nook and sent it to me with about 14 heart emojis. "One day," she said dreamily, "when we make real money." "Who says we can't have it now?" I said. "I can build something like that." Her eyes lit up, seriously, like custom built-ins. "Yeah," I said. "I mean, I'm not a contractor, but I built the coffee table and the TV console, remember. It'll take some weekends, but I can do it." My dad was a carpenter by trade before he got into oilfield work. Some of my best memories are in our garage in Colorado, smelling sawdust, him teaching me how to use a level, how to sand with the grain. Building that bookcase felt like a way to contribute something tangible, something she couldn't dismiss as basic life skill. For 3 weekends, that office was my workshop. I measured everything twice, used a laser level, watched 2 hours of YouTube tutorials on mounting to studs. I sanded, primed, painted. I cut my finger once and bled on one of the boards, cleaned it up, kept going. I could see it coming together. In my head, I imagined her reaction, how proud she'd be, how she'd post it on Instagram with some caption about having a handy husband, how maybe for once I'd be in the green flag category in those group chats instead of the cautionary tale. When I finally finished, it honestly looked good. Not perfect. You could tell it wasn't factory made if you really inspected the corners, but solid, level, this big floor-to-ceiling presence that made the room look like it belonged in a catalog. I even built a little window bench with storage inside for her extra blankets. "I'm done," I called. "Come look." She walked in with her phone in her hand, half scrolling an email. She stopped in the doorway and stared. There was this half-second where I saw actual awe flicker across her face. Then she stepped closer, squinted down the line of one shelf, and her mouth turned down. "It's crooked," she said. My stomach dropped. "What?" She knelt down, pulled a hardcover book off her existing shelf, and placed it at the edge of one of the new ones. "Look, there's a gap." She tapped the right edge, where there was maybe a 2 millimeter difference between the shelf and the book's spine. "It's slanted. You can't see it." "It's within level," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I used a laser. The studs in this wall aren't perfectly straight either. That's why old houses—" "I should have hired a professional," she said, cutting me off. She stood up and took a step back like the whole thing was offensive. "This looks cheap, like a DIY fail video. I can't have this behind me on Zoom calls, Caleb. This is my job." The humiliation burned hotter than the grief. "I can make small adjustments," I said. "If there's a spot that bothers you, I can shim it, sand the corner." She was already walking out of the room. "No, it's fine. I'll just get someone who knows what they're doing." The next day, I came home from a grocery run to find her and her sister in the office with pry bars. "What are you doing?" I asked, frozen in the doorway. "We're taking it down," Hannah said, not looking at me, bracing her foot against the wall and yanking. "I called a contractor. He can come in 2 weeks if we clear this out." There's this sound wood makes when you've spent hours coaxing it to fit together, and then someone rips it apart. It's not just the crack, it's the way the screws tear free, the paint shears, the drywall gives. It's violent in a way that hurts your teeth. Her sister, Claire, glanced over at me with something like pity. "Hey, it looked good," she said weakly. "Just not exactly what she wanted." "That's the problem," Hannah snapped. "Good enough doesn't cut it when my reputation is on the line." I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just watched them destroy 3 weekends of my work, stacked in the driveway like junk, while Hannah gave the contractor her credit card number over the phone for a deposit. Something in me clicked off. That night, lying in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling fan, it felt like someone had swapped out this internal script I'd been running my whole life. The old one said, "Try harder, be helpful. If you just get it right next time, she'll be happy. If you learn the right way, she'll stop criticizing you." The new one said, "Nothing will ever be enough." Because it wasn't about the angle of a shelf or the alignment of towels. It was about control, about perfection, about her needing the world to be just so, and me being a human being who, by definition, could never be that. And I realized I was participating in my own humiliation. I was running around this invisible obstacle course she designed, getting zapped every time I hit a wall, telling myself that if I just memorized the course better, I'd stop getting shocked. I couldn't keep living like that. The next morning was a Monday. Hannah had back-to-back Zoom calls. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen island with my mug, and opened a blank note on my phone. I wrote, "For the next month, I'm not doing any house chores unless we discuss and agree on standards, division, and respect." I deleted and reworded that sentence about 12 times. It sounded dramatic, but the truth was, what I'd been doing, constantly guessing, constantly being corrected, constantly being mocked, was slowly killing my self-respect. When she finally emerged for a break, I said, "Can we talk for a second?" She sighed like I'd asked her to repaint the house. "Make it quick, I have a client call in 10. "I'm done," I said. She blinked. "With what?" "With the way things are around here." I swallowed. "With me attempting chores and you redoing them in front of me. With being called a man-child to your friends. With being treated like I'm stupid because I don't fold towels the way you do. I'm not doing it anymore." Her eyes narrowed. "What does that even mean?" It means until we sit down with a neutral third party, like a couple's therapist, and figure out a system we both agree is fair and respectful. I'm not doing housework. I'm not putting myself in a position to be mocked or micromanaged. She laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. So your solution to "I feel criticized" is "I'm going to stop lifting a finger." My solution is to stop participating in a system where I'm constantly told I'm failing, I said. You clearly don't think I'm capable, so I'm stepping back. Her cheeks flushed. This is exactly what I mean by weaponized incompetence. There it was, the TikTok word. You're not incompetent, she said. You just pretend to be so you can do the bare minimum and make me the nagging bitch. I see the videos. I read the articles. This is a playbook. I'm not pretending to be bad at anything, I said, keeping my voice low. I built you a bookcase, Hannah. Maybe it wasn't showroom perfect, but it was free labor from your husband who loves you. You tore it out and said you should have hired a professional. You redo every dish and towel I touch. If I'm so incompetent, the logical next step is, don't give me tasks. Right. She crossed her arms. No, the logical next step is, you learn to do it right. I shouldn't have to ask you to Google how to load a dishwasher. You're a grown man. Then teach me, I said, without insulting me, without going behind my back and mocking me to your friends. I'm not your mother, she snapped. I don't want you to be my mother, I said. I want you to be my partner, but partners don't call each other man-child behind their back. They don't tear down their work in front of them. They don't assume bad faith every time the other person makes a mistake. We stared at each other across the kitchen like two people on opposite sides of a courtroom. So what, she said finally, you're just going on strike. You're going to let the house fall apart and make me live in filth as punishment. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm protecting myself. I will clean up after myself. My food, my clothes, my bathroom. I'm not touching shared spaces until we get help with this. Help, she repeated, incredulous. You mean therapy. You want to drag a stranger into our marriage because you can't figure out how to use a Swiffer. I took a breath. I scheduled a couples counseling appointment for next Thursday. I already talked to someone. That threw her. You did this behind my back, she said. There was hurt there under the anger. I tried to talk to you, I said quietly. For months, every time I brought up how I felt, you told me to just learn and called me dramatic. I needed someone else to tell me if I'm losing my mind. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, then back at me. I don't have time for this, she said. I have a client waiting. We'll talk later. She didn't come to the therapy appointment. She texted me 15 minutes before. Can't make it. Deadline moved up. Reschedule. The therapist, a woman in her 40s named Dr. Ellis, asked if I wanted to use the time anyway. So I sat in that office alone and said out loud for the first time, I think my wife emotionally abuses me over housework. Even saying the word abuse felt dramatic as hell. I kept backpedaling, softening it. Maybe that's too strong. I mean, it's not like she hits me. It's just constant criticism, belittling, public humiliation. Dr. Ellis didn't flinch. She said, people can be emotionally abusive without meaning to be. They can be acting out their own anxiety, their own trauma, but the impact on you is still real. By the time I left, I had homework. Write down specific examples of interactions that hurt. Journal how I felt before and after. Imagine what fair would look like if I could wave a magic wand. That night, I implemented my strike. I washed my own plate, fork, and pan after dinner. Hers sat in the sink. I took my clothes to a wash and fold laundry service I scheduled through an app. Her hamper in the corner of the bedroom stayed full. I cleaned my bathroom. The hall one we'd agreed was mine when we moved in because she'd claimed the en-suite for her skincare products. I wiped the sink, scrubbed the toilet, changed the hand towel. I didn't touch the en-suite. On Thursday, I called a maid service and booked a bi-weekly cleaning for my half. I know that sounds ridiculous. Houses don't have literal halves. But I drew a mental line: my office, my bathroom, my side of the closet, my nightstand, my car. The contract clearly said what they'd touch, and I walked them through it when they came. What about the kitchen? The cleaner, a woman named Maria, asked. Just this side of the island, I said, half joking, half not, and only if the dishes are mine. She gave me a look like she'd seen some shit in her line of work, and this was still a new level of petty. But she shrugged and did the job. I started cooking only for myself. Cooking had always been my thing. I like it. It relaxes me. I'd make big meals, plate them nicely, pack leftovers into containers for both of us. Hannah took that for granted, I think. It was invisible labor because it was the one domain she didn't critique. The week after the bookcase incident, I grilled chicken, roasted some potatoes, and sautéed green beans. I plated one plate, put the rest into a Tupperware with my name on it, and stuck it in the back of the fridge. Hannah came home late and opened the fridge, scanning. "Did you not make dinner?" she asked. "I did," I said, "for me." She stared at me like I'd just admitted to kicking Murphy. "So I'm supposed to fend for myself now. Is this part of your little protest?" "You said you feel like you have a teenage son," I said. "Consider this demonstration that you actually have a capable adult roommate who's no longer signing up for being your full-service cook and punching bag." "That is so manipulative," she spat. "You're intentionally doing less to prove some point. This is exactly weaponized incompetence." "No," I said, feeling something steelier in my spine than I was used to. "Weaponized incompetence is pretending you can't do something so your partner will take it over. I'm not pretending. I'm clearly capable. I've been feeding you for 3 years. I'm choosing to stop until we fix the disrespect. That's called a boundary." She slammed the fridge. "You are so cruel." She DoorDashed herself poke and ate it alone in her spotless office. For the first couple of weeks, she was furious but confident. She told her friends in the group chat that I was throwing a tantrum. I know because one night she was on FaceTime in the living room and I heard her say, "He hired a maid for his side of the house." His side, like we're roommates in a dorm. "Girl, that's divorce behavior," Lauren said through the phone. "He's making you live in filth to prove a point." "She thinks I'm making you live in filth," I called from my office doorway. "You won't even let a cereal box sit at an angle without having a panic attack." "See," Hannah said, turning the camera toward me. "He thinks I'm crazy." I walked back to my office. I refused to argue in front of her friends again. At first, the house didn't exactly fall apart. It drifted. The sink started having a perpetual load of dishes. The dishwasher, which used to be run and emptied on a rigid schedule, now sat in this weird limbo right before full. She seemed to have some internal resistance to loading it wrong without being able to blame me, so plates and bowls piled up on the counter instead. Laundry baskets multiplied. There were the usual 2, one in our bedroom, one in the hallway, but suddenly there was a third one by the bathroom, overflowing with towels. Then a fourth appeared in the office with delicates. She'd do a load here and there, dump it on the bed, then have to move it off at night without folding because she was exhausted from work. Little things I used to handle went unhandled. The trash and recycling didn't go out on their own. The cans filled, then overflowed, then the cardboard started stacking in the mudroom. I watched silently as she shoved a Trader Joe's bag full of recycling into the corner with her foot, like maybe if it compacted enough it'd disappear. The front yard, which had been my domain, slowly turned into that house on the street. Dandelions popped up. The grass got patchy. The HOA sent a politely worded email about lawn maintenance standards, CCing both of us. "Can you deal with this?" she forwarded me, adding, "You know I hate yard work." I replied, "Happy to discuss division of chores with Dr. Ellis. Her office said she can see us together next Thursday at 6. Are you available?" No response. 2 days later, the HOA sent a second email, less polite. Hannah cornered me in the kitchen that night, waving her phone. "You're going to get us fined." "I'm not stopping you from mowing the lawn," I said. She clenched her jaw. "That's your job." "Says who?" I asked. "We never agreed to that. I just did it. And while I did, you criticized the way I did dishes and laundry and made the bed. Where's the line where my contributions are enough for you to stop calling me a man-child?" "I never said you were a man-child," she snapped. "You said it to Lauren on our couch while I was in the room." Her eyes flicked away, guilty. "It was a joke." "Not to me." We stood there in the kitchen, surrounded by the invisible consequences of a marriage quietly going on strike in both directions. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "You're acting like a child." I almost laughed. The irony was too much. "Adults set boundaries," I said. "Children stomp when they don't get their way." It wasn't my finest line, but it slipped out. Hannah started crying then. Not loud, theatrical sobs, but that silent, furious crying where the tears just leak out while your face tries to hold on to anger. "I feel like everything is on my shoulders," she said. "Work, the house, the bills, our social life. And now you're just opting out. And somehow you're making me the bad guy." "I've been paying half the bills," I said softly. "I've been cooking, fixing things, handling the car maintenance, the taxes, our insurance, Murphy's vet appointments. It's not like I was sitting on the couch playing Xbox while you cleaned in heels, Hannah." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. You could see her brain scrolling through a mental list, realizing some of the invisible labor hadn't been as invisible as she thought. "Then why does it feel like I do everything?" she whispered. I didn't have a neat answer for that. I only knew how I felt, like no matter what I did, it didn't count. The legal and financial stuff crept in slowly, like mold. One afternoon, I noticed a $1,200 charge on our joint credit card from Portland Custom Built-ins. "That the new bookcase?" I asked when she came home. "Yes," she said, defensive right out of the gate. "And before you say anything, it's my money too." "I know," I said, "but we usually talk about anything over $500. "I didn't think I needed your permission to fix something that bothers me every time I walk into my office," she snapped. "You don't need my permission," I said. "You need my partnership. We're not roommates splitting rent. We're married. Big purchases affect both of us, especially when we're trying to pay off your student loans faster." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, here we go." I felt something flicker in my chest that I hadn't felt before. Fear. Not of her exactly, but of what could happen if this pattern continued and we had kids, or one of us lost a job, or we got sick. If she thought she had unilateral authority over big decisions because I was bad at folding towels, where did that stop? The next day I made an appointment with a financial planner, alone. His name was Raj, mid-40s, calm voice, asked a lot of good questions. "Do you feel like you and your wife have the same financial goals?" he asked. "Not lately," I said. "Do you feel like you can talk to her about money without it turning into a fight?" I thought about the bookcase charge, the way she'd bragged to her friends about buying a new Peloton without asking permission last year, framing basic communication as oppression. "Not really," I admitted. He suggested something I'd never considered, a post-nuptial agreement. "You're not talking about divorce," he said. "You're talking about clarity, about what happens with assets, debt, and responsibilities if things go south. Sometimes having that on paper actually gives people enough security to start talking honestly about everything else." When I mentioned this idea to Hannah that night, she reacted like I'd served her divorce papers. "A post-nup," she said, laughing in disbelief. "What, are you getting ready to leave me because I don't like how you pack the dishwasher?" "It's not about leaving," I said. "It's about protecting both of us. If you're going to make four-figure purchases without talking to me, I need to make sure my credit and savings aren't on the line if something goes wrong." "That is psycho," she snapped. "You're being so dramatic. This is like manipulative lawyering. Who suggested this, Dr. Ellis? Did you two cook this up together? How to punish your wife for standards 101. "She doesn't give legal advice," I said. "She helps me see where my boundaries are. And I'm realizing I've let a lot of things slide because I'm scared of your reaction. That's not healthy." "You're seriously going to make me hire a lawyer because you're mad about chores?" Her voice was climbing into that hysterical register I'd only heard twice before. Once when her dad went missing for 3 days on a bender, and once when a promotion she thought she'd locked in went to a guy who played golf with her boss. "We don't have to do it if you don't want to," I said. "But the fact that your first response is to call me psycho instead of asking why I feel like I need that protection, that's exactly why I thought of it." She didn't talk to me for 2 days after that. In the silence, the house kept decaying. Garbage bags leaned against the back door, waiting for someone to take them out. Fruit flies started hovering over the compost bin. Clean laundry lived permanently in baskets, wrinkling. Murphy's dog hair gathered in drifts along the baseboards. Hannah tried in her own way. I'd catch her frantically wiping counters at midnight, eyes half open, or scrubbing the bathroom sink with the kind of aggression people reserve for enemies. But she was working 50-plus hours a week, and her standards were absolute. Every spot she missed, every streak left on a mirror became another reason to be mad, at herself, at me, at the world. My half of the house, with the help of Maria the cleaner and my own maintenance, stayed relatively sane. My office was tidy. My bathroom was clean. I cooked, ate, washed my own dishes, wiped my own stove. I slept with clean sheets I'd picked up from the wash and fold. It was like living in a split reality. The tipping point came on a Sunday. We were supposed to host her team for a casual brunch. Nothing fancy. Bagels, fruit, coffee, a chance for her to suck up to the new VP in a non-office setting. She'd scheduled it a month out. And then, true to form, she'd put off most of the preparation until the last minute because work had been insane, and she'd convinced herself she still had plenty of time. The night before, at 10 p.m., she walked into my office looking like she'd just run a marathon. "I need your help," she said. The words sounded like they hurt. "With what?" I asked. I wasn't being sarcastic. I genuinely wanted specifics. "Everything," she said, waving vaguely. "The floors, the bathroom, the patio, the guest room. I can't have my boss seeing the house like this. He'll think I'm a mess." I glanced past her into the hallway. It did look rough. Shoes everywhere, laundry baskets, a film of dust on the console table by the door. I felt a pang of second-hand embarrassment imagining a VP walking through all that. "Okay," I said slowly. "I'll help under one condition." She narrowed her eyes. "Of course there's a condition." "I'm not doing this by myself while you point out everything I missed," I said. "We make a list together of what actually needs to be done company ready, not Hannah's personal anxiety level. We split it. When I finish my half, you say thank you and you don't redo it in front of me. If you want to secretly refold a towel later when I'm not around, I literally will never know and therefore cannot be hurt. Deal?" Her jaw worked. "I can't promise I won't see things you missed." "I know you'll see them," I said. "I'm asking you not to perform your disapproval like a floor show. Can you do that for one night?" She hesitated. This, more than anything, told me how compulsive her need for control was. I was offering practical help. The price was a few hours of restraint. Finally she exhaled. "Fine, make a list." We sat at the kitchen table, scribbling tasks. Vacuum downstairs, mop kitchen, clean guest bathroom, wipe counters, clean up yard enough that no one calls CPS on us. I took vacuuming, mopping, and the yard. She took the bathrooms, counters, and guest room. "Start with the bathroom," I suggested. "That's where people really notice." "You're not the project manager here," she snapped reflexively, then caught herself. "Sorry, I'm just stressed." I vacuumed the entire downstairs, moved chairs, got into corners. I took genuine pride in it. I threw on some music, got into a rhythm. When I finished, I mopped the kitchen like a man with a mission, changing the water when it got too dirty, making sure I didn't miss under the table. I could feel her eyes on me every now and then as she scrubbed the guest bathroom. I forced myself not to check her face for approval. When I was done, sweat on my neck, I set the mop aside and said, "Okay, floors are done." "Thanks," she said automatically, still bent over the bathtub. Half an hour later, I walked back into the kitchen to grab water. She was remopping. She hadn't even waited an hour. She saw me and froze, the mop in her hand mid-swipe. "I thought we agreed," I started. "There were streaks," she said quickly. "You pushed the dirt into the corners. I don't want my boss seeing." I didn't yell. I just turned around, walked into the pantry, and closed the door. I'm not proud of what I did next. I sat on the floor between the bulk Costco paper towel pack and the dog food, and I cried. Not loud, ugly sobs, just this quiet, steady leak of tears I couldn't stop. Because it wasn't about floors. It was about the fact that she literally could not stop herself from visually correcting me, even when our entire social and professional reputation, hers especially, was on the line the next morning. She'd rather risk this brunch being a disaster than tolerate streaky floors for 12 hours. After a while, I heard soft footsteps. The pantry door eased open a crack. "Caleb," her voice was small, "are you crying?" I wiped my face with the back of my hand. "Yeah." She came in and closed the door behind her, so we were in this little dark box together, just the hum of the fridge on the other side of the wall. "I didn't mean to." "You always say that," I cut in. "You never mean to, but you keep doing it." She sat down on the floor opposite me, knees pulled up, mop abandoned outside. "I feel out of control," she admitted. The words seemed to surprise even her. "All the time. Like if one thing is crooked, everything in my life is crooked. My dad disappearing, my mom's house being a trash heap, my job being one bad quarter away from layoffs. The only thing I can control is this house. And when you do things wrong." "Wrong," I echoed softly. "Not the way I learned is right," she corrected. "It makes my brain itch. I know that sounds stupid." "It doesn't sound stupid," I said. "It sounds like anxiety, maybe OCD, maybe trauma, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but whatever it is, you're taking it out on me. You're making me an extension of your dad, someone you can't rely on, someone who screws everything up. And I'm not him, Hannah, I'm me. I am trying, constantly, and you'd never know that from the way you talk about me." She was quiet for a long time. "If I don't redo things," she whispered, "I feel unsafe, like something bad will happen." "Like what?" I asked gently. She swallowed. "Like people will see I'm a fraud, at work, like my boss will think, if she can't even keep her house together, she can't handle a team. Like if things get messy, my dad will show up again, or I'll turn into my mom." "I get that you're scared," I said. "I really do, but you're creating the thing you're most afraid of." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "You're so afraid of being your mom that you've swung to the opposite extreme," I said. "She had chaos, you demand perfection. But the feeling is the same for everyone else in the house, walking on eggshells, afraid to touch anything because it'll be wrong, afraid to disappoint you. That's how I feel, like a kid in a museum where everything says do not touch." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want you to feel like that," she whispered. "But I do," I said. "And that's why I stopped, not to punish you, to survive. I was starting to believe I really was useless, that I wasn't a real adult man because I didn't fold sheets like Martha Stewart. And the more I doubted myself, the more I pulled away. From chores, from you, from wanting a family." "You don't want kids anymore?" she asked, stunned. We'd always vaguely talked about someday. "I can't imagine having kids with someone who thinks I'm incompetent," I said. "If you think I'm a man-child now, wait until I forget a permission slip or put a diaper on backwards. I'm not signing up to be the dumb dad in the sitcom of our life." She covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. "I'm sorry," she said. It was muffled, but it was real. "God, I'm so sorry. I thought if I didn't have high standards, everything would fall apart. I didn't realize I was making you feel like trash." I let that sit. An apology is just air until there's action behind it. "Come to therapy with me," I said eventually. "Not to prove I'm right and you're wrong, to figure out where this comes from and how to stop bleeding on me when I didn't cut you." She gave a watery laugh. "Did Dr. Ellis give you that line?" "No," I said. "Instagram did, but it's true." She wiped her eyes. "Okay, I'll go." The brunch the next day was fine. Not perfect. There were crumbs on the counter I hadn't noticed, a streak on the living room window. But no one walked in and thought, wow, this woman can't manage her life. They ate bagels, complimented the house, scratched Murphy's ears. Her boss said, "Love the built-ins," and she stiffened for a second before saying, "Thanks, we had a guy do them." Like the bookcase incident was a splinter that had finally worked its way out. That week, we went to therapy together. I half expected her to charm Dr. Ellis, to present herself as the long-suffering wife with the lazy husband, to weaponize pop-psych terms and make me the villain. But to her credit, she was honest. She talked about her childhood home smelling like mildew, her mom hoarding newspapers stacked to the ceiling, her dad disappearing for days, the shame she felt whenever friends came over. How she swore, at 12 years old, that her house would never be like that. She talked about finding cleaning videos online that made her feel calm, like if she could fold a fitted sheet perfectly, maybe her life would finally make sense. She admitted that when she saw me load a dishwasher wrong, it lit up the same part of her brain that used to go off when her dad stumbled in drunk and knocked over a lamp. "I know it's irrational," she said, "but I can't turn it off." Dr. Ellis nodded. "You might not be able to turn off the feeling," she said, "but you can control the behavior that follows, the urge to criticize, to redo. That's where choice comes in. That's where love comes in." Therapy didn't magically fix everything. The house didn't revert to a pristine magazine shoot, nor did it collapse into squalor. It settled somewhere in between, lived in. Sometimes the sink had dishes. Sometimes the yard was a little shaggy. Sometimes a towel was hung slightly crooked and Hannah would physically leave the room rather than straighten it, working on tolerating imperfection like exposure therapy. We drew up an actual, written division of labor. I took cooking most nights, trash and recycling, yard, my bathroom, my laundry, which I'd reclaimed from the wash and fold, Murphy stuff, and husband projects like fixing the leaky faucet and replacing light fixtures. She took her office, ensuite bathroom, her laundry, most of the paperwork with input from me, and the things she actually enjoyed like organizing the pantry. Shared spaces, living room, kitchen, guest room, we split 50-50 with a few rules. If you ask the other person to do something, you say exactly what you want done, not clean up. And if they do it, you don't redo it in front of them. If you must redo it, you do it quietly later without commentary. No more man-child, roommate, or weaponized incompetence jokes, in public or private. If either of us felt the resentment meter ticking up past a certain point, we agreed to call a maintenance session with Dr. Ellis before it turned into months of simmering. We also did something that felt weirdly formal but necessary. We separated some of our finances. We kept the joint account for mortgage, utilities, and shared expenses we both approved, but we each opened individual checking accounts for discretionary spending. If she wanted to drop $1,200 on a custom closet system, she'd do it from her account. If I wanted to buy a new gaming PC, I'd do it from mine. Anything that crossed into the joint, we agreed to text about first. I still floated the idea of a postnup. She wasn't ready, but she did agree to sit down with Raj the planner and at least map out our financial picture together. Seeing the numbers in black and white, how much we'd save if we cut back on impulse purchases, how much debt was in her name versus mine, seemed to shake something loose for her. Control doesn't always mean doing everything yourself, he said, tapping a chart. Sometimes it means delegating and trusting that the world won't end if someone stacks the plates a little differently. Cheesy as it sounded, that line stuck with both of us. The biggest shift, though, was internal. For me, it was finally believing that my worth as a man wasn't tied to meeting one person's impossible standards, that my ability to load a dishwasher the right way didn't determine whether I was husband material, that I had a right to demand respect in my own home, even if the conflict made my stomach knot. For Hannah, it was recognizing that her perfectionism wasn't just high standards, it was a trauma response, a shield that became a sword. She had to sit with the fact that she'd been abusive, even if she hadn't meant to be. I always pictured abusers as like my dad, she said in therapy once. Loud, drunk, obvious. I didn't think someone quietly refolding towels could be that. Abuse is a pattern, Dr. Ellis said gently. It's about power and control. You used criticism and withholding approval to get control. Now that you see it, you can choose differently. We stumbled more than once. There was a night I made chili and she wrinkled her nose and said, "You always oversalt things," before catching herself. She immediately apologized, but the words still punched. I had to walk the dog for an hour before I was ready to talk. There was a morning I woke up to find her fixing the books I'd shelved in the living room by height and color. I snapped, "Do you ever get tired of rearranging everything I touch?" And we were right back in the ring. But there were also small triumphs. The first time she watched me load the dishwasher and didn't say anything, I almost cried. She stood there, visibly clenching and unclenching her fists, and when I closed the door, she said, "Thank you for doing that." Her voice wobbled like she wasn't sure which part of her to feed. The first time I cleaned the guest bathroom and she walked in after, looked around and said, "Looks great," I felt 10 feet tall. The first time her friend Lauren came over and made a little joke, "Is Caleb still folding towels like a drunk raccoon?" Hannah shut it down. "Don't talk about my husband like that," she said. "He does a lot around here." Lauren blinked, taken aback. "Damn, okay, sorry." I was in the kitchen when I heard it. I had to grip the counter for a second to steady myself. We built something else in the process, chosen family. It started when things were still bad, before the pantry breakdown, when I crashed on my friend Liam's couch for a night after a particularly brutal argument about the lawn. He and his wife, Jenna, are one of those couples who actually seem to like each other. They move around their house like a team, handing each other the baby without breaking conversation, trading off cooking and cleanup without comment. Sitting at their table that night, watching Liam rinse dishes while Jenna loaded the dishwasher in a way that would have made Hannah's eye twitch, I felt this ache. Not jealousy exactly, more like grief for a version of my life that felt impossibly far away. "You know this isn't normal, right?" Jenna said after Liam took the baby up to bed, and I told them everything. "Everyone fights about chores," I said automatically. "Sure," she said, "but not everyone gets mocked in group chats. Not everyone's wife tears down their bookcase and calls them incompetent. That's not small." They didn't give me ultimatums. They didn't say leave her or stay. They just kept their guest room made up and their door open. When I eventually moved back home after that night, I did so knowing I had somewhere to go if things ever crossed a line. That mattered. Hannah started building her own chosen family too, outside of the echo chamber of friends who sent her TikToks about weaponized incompetence and muttered, "Girl, you need to leave," every time she vented about me. She joined a support group for adult children of hoarders. Hearing other people talk about growing up in chaos, swinging to control, sabotaging their relationships, It broke something open in her. One night she came home from group and said, "A guy there today talked about how he used to scream at his wife for leaving a glass on the coffee table. Not because he cared about the glass, but because his brain saw it as the first domino of a hoarder house. That's me. I'm that guy." "You're you," I said, "but yeah, I see the pattern." "I don't want to be that guy," she said. "Then don't," I said simply. "Or at least don't without getting help. You're already doing the work." We never did build that postnup. Not yet, anyway. The conversation's still on the table, like insurance you hope you never need. We did, however, rebuild the bookcase, together. Not the built-ins in her office. Those are there, perfectly level, courtesy of Portland custom built-ins. But one Saturday months later, we went to Home Depot, bought lumber, and built a simpler, smaller shelf for the living room. I cut the wood, she sanded, we both painted. There are tiny imperfections if you look close, an edge that's not perfectly flush, a nail sunk a hair too deep. It's not Instagram perfect. Hannah loves it. "Sometimes when I see that it's not perfect," she said one night, curled up on the couch under a blanket, "I remind myself, neither am I and you still love me." I ran my hand along the top of the shelf, feeling the grain under my fingers. "Yeah," I said, "I do." The maid service still comes twice a month, not for my half, but for the heavy lifting in shared spaces. We budget for it together now. Calling in outside help stopped being a weapon and started being a tool. I still cook most nights, she still sometimes hovers, we're both learning. The house didn't literally fall apart in the end. It teetered, cracked, shed pieces we didn't need. What really fell apart was the illusion that one person's perfection could hold a whole marriage together. Turns out, imperfect help is a hell of a lot better than no help. And respect, messy, halting, practiced respect, is better than perfection every time. We're not some fairy tale, happily ever after couple now. Some days, I still feel her eyes on the back of my head when I load the dishwasher. Some days, she catches herself mid-sigh and has to leave the room. But we talk, we apologize, we course correct. And I no longer live in a house where every crooked towel is a moral failing. So I don't know. From the outside, maybe some people will still see a guy who went on strike and think I'm the asshole, that I should have just tried harder, watched more YouTube tutorials on hospital corners and dish stacking. All I know is that the day I stopped doing anything at all was the day we finally started doing the real work.